Hello and welcome back to the Atmosphere's Electric. There's Fran. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good. Good morning. Good morning. Afternoon.
Good
morning.
Still
Yeah,
morning.
good morning.
Yeah, well, somewhere in the world it's probably afternoon. So and no one knows what time it is. So there's no evidence. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening,
Good evening.
and welcome. I'm Rich, and obviously we're back for another episode of the Atmosphere's Electric. This one is going to be, I guess, the easiest way to describe it is a bit of a transfer window roundup. With there being no Premier League football this weekend, we're in the midst of a cup season with the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup. But I think it's only fair for us to start with the complete shambles of our predictions from last weekend. We're very quick to tell everybody when we've had a good weekend. I think it's fair to say if anybody out there tiptoed through that with the correct ACCA, they did very, very well, didn't they?
Yeah, you've even made yourself a fortune, or you can see the future. Which, if it's the second one, please get in touch.
Yeah, do you want a spot? I mean, obviously, I did start. Obviously, the Saturday night game when Wolves done Villa was another tipping point. Obviously, all of mine from Sunday, literally almost. Well, let's be honest. It started with the first game of the weekend, Nottingham Forest beating Brighton 7-0. It wasn't bizarre, and we even said you could see all three results, but nobody saw Nottingham Forest 7, Brighton 0.
And that's it. You just nailed it there. Some of the results were not the outcome, the physical result itself. There was loads of them where you've gone like nobody saw Arsenal. You could have seen Arsenal win, but not of that scoreline. Like there was so many results where like even Everton to beat Leicester. I thought Everton would beat Leicester, but not before. Like it's just some bonkers scores. But yeah, if you've managed to land an ACCA in that, well done. And I bet your bank balance is looking pretty healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. If you went with a Wolves, Fulham, Southampton treble, you probably didn't need to work this week. You're probably on a beach somewhere, enjoying the merriment of that. And again, of course, on the Sunday with both Spurs and Palace winning 2-0 away from, again, if you get anywhere near that score, let alone a result, then you've done amazing. And of course, Arsenal beating Man City 5-1, which it's interesting, isn't it? Because you talk about Newcastle losing to Fulham, Arsenal beating Man City, but then last night you would have thought it was the other way around. And actually, Newcastle were absolutely dominant from almost start to finish. They were. It's like it feels like a couple of years ago when Arsenal were on that first sort of break into the Champions League. They went to St James's Park and got battered, didn't they? It felt very much like actually Newcastle were miles ahead of Arsenal on the journey, which actually isn't the case.
The surprising thing for me is I thought for a while that Newcastle have become one of the best teams in the league defensively. They look rock solid. The energy and the pressing that they've been doing in games has been phenomenal, and they've got one of the best forwards in the world in Isak up front. So when you look at that on paper, I mean, the shock to me is that they went and got beat by Fulham, and in previous games have dropped points where they're unbelievable at the minute. So it's probably a bit of a shock that they did go and beat Arsenal, but I think their team style-wise just suits Arsenal down to the ground. I think if the more that they play each other, I think you're probably going to see Newcastle winning more often because they are bullying the bully.
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting. I didn't get to see much of it last night because I was out and about myself. But yeah, all of the reports looked like it was pretty comfortable with Arsenal kind of having a couple of half chances, but very much deserved. And 4-0 over 2 legs is, again, nobody would have seen that. When the draw was made, nobody saw the outcome being Newcastle for Arsenal, did they?
No. I mean, bar the chance that Odegaard had early doors in the second leg, which he swazzed with his wrong foot. Arsenal didn't look like scoring. You could say that over the 2 legs, they genuinely didn't look like scoring. Newcastle were solid, and that's been the case in the Premier League in the past few months as well, hasn't it?
Absolutely, and it leads us nicely on to what a lot of Arsenal fans are moaning about. We're going to do that transfer window roundup now, and I think the logical way to do this is alphabetically. If I'm honest, I've sort of toyed around with how we're going to do this, whether we go top to bottom, bottom to top. But actually, I think unless you have a different idea, unless you want to go bottom to top.
I'm glad you said that because my notes are in alphabetical order. So
fine, there we go. It's like we prepared some stuff, which we absolutely haven't, as always. So let's start with Arsenal. The glaring miss that was compounded last night is in that forward 3. Obviously, looks like they've picked up another injury. No idea yet of how long that is. I haven't seen any reports this morning coming through. But, another player going off injured in the front 3. How much of a, before we go into good, bad, ugly, how much of a sin is it they didn't get a forward player in this window?
So you could argue that Arsenal have had, they haven't signed anyone, but not losing any players. You could argue that they've done all right, as we've been saying. Sometimes the window's about not losing anyone. However, when you're hunting down Liverpool, they're genuinely the only contender, you'd say, to the title challenge, Arsenal. To not have a forward in the summer window lined up, I think is criminal. But then to go January and not get one, like there's forwards that they could have got on loan. Like if they don't want to spend money in January, they could have got somebody in on loan. Like I just think it's criminal. Like I genuinely believe that them not signing a forward now has just gifted the league to Liverpool.
But why can they not afford to buy a player in January? Like Arsenal are a financial juggernaut. They're set. They don't need much. We're talking about sort of finishing touches. You know, you talk about Kvaratskhelia that went from Napoli to PSG. You know, feels like he would have been perfect for that system in terms of what
Absolutely.
they do. You know, there was talk of Gyökeres, there was talk of Osimhen, there was talk of Ollie Watkins at 60. Like, if you're throwing around a £60 million offer for Ollie Watkins, that's one of two things. You've either got the £60 million you can spend on Ollie Watkins, or you're peacocking for your fans to go, oh, but we tried. We never thought they'd accept it. So
I don't think it's the case of the money. I generally don't like you've just said there. I think they've got the money. I think they've got enough wiggle room with PSI. You know, they earn the income from the stadium, tickets, everything. That I think it's there. I don't know whether they don't want to spend it in January because they feel like they'd be overspending in January. However, when you're in a position to challenge for the title, I think that's nonsensical. I genuinely think it's bonkers.
This overspending, underspending piece is becoming actually a little bit tiresome for me because actually, like you've said there, you started this off with, if Arsenal are going to be Liverpool's biggest challengers, they've got to behave like that. You know, Man City that are struggling have gone and dropped 160, 170 million quid in the window. You know, Liverpool have got, as we've said many times, talking about the season, they've got that rotation of the front six that can dip in and out. And if they lose Jota to an injury, doesn't really matter. Gakpo chips in. You know, Arsenal are now arguably looking at Nwaneri, Sterling and Trossard as being their front three.
Let's be honest about Arsenal as well. If the two young boys hadn't come through into that squad and actually started performing and shining, they'd be threadbare right now. They would be, wouldn't they? Like that bench would look dreadful. They're so fortunate that the left back and the right winger have come through and actually performing. I mean, Martinelli, he's been poor. I wouldn't be starting him. I'd be starting Nwaneri now. So they're very, very fortunate those lads have come through, to be honest, because without them, they'd be threadbare and you'd be questioning the forward line even more now, wouldn't you?
I mean, we've touched on this again. Do you think some of this is that kind of losing Edu, not replaced Edu? As far as I haven't seen. I'm pretty sure they haven't replaced Edu sort of properly in terms of, you know, we were talking about Dan Ashworth. You know, do you think it's just that they just didn't have the preparation, the people to prep the window, and therefore they've thought, let's keep our powder dry and go in the summer? Because like I keep saying, there was lots of names being touted around. You know, John Duran. You know, we're about to go on to kind of obviously, you know, alphabetically. Like, you can't tell me that Arsenal couldn't have gone for him.
Yeah. So as far as I'm aware, they've replaced Edu with his number 2. So I think they've got somebody in position. So the whole prepping piece, and even say they haven't got somebody in, they've still got staff in the club to be able to prep for a transfer window, which is one of the biggest they've had in a while. Because, you know, as good as Liverpool look, they don't look entirely unbeatable. You know, they should be trying to get a forward in. You know, even I'm thinking of someone like Karim Benzema. You know, like they probably could have got him on loan. Like I'm sure that the Saudi season's finishing at some point near.
It's a tax issue, isn't it? Like, players don't want to lose the tax, but yeah.
But there is forwards out there. There's a lot of players who have gone and moved on loan. Like they could have got some of these players, and they've just chucked the league away from me. Like they've chucked their season away now. If I'm being honest, like they've just gone out the cup. Like what they're playing for now, the Champions League. I don't think they're going to win that. Like,
not based on.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be another trophy this season.
And so, if serious question, and I know we do this a lot, and then we moan about other people, but if they don't win anything this year, is that Arteta done, or does he get more time?
Well, I think it's now a question of, you know, who's made that decision to not pull the trigger and get a forward. Is it Arteta? Is it him saying he's happy with Kai Havertz? If that's the case, I'd say it's done. I'd say if you're not aware that you need a forward or you need strengthen the squad, I'd say it's on Arteta, and yeah, he's done. If it's not and he's being hamstrung by the club, I think it's a different situation. So I'm a bit on the fence, to be honest. Like, also, who would you replace him with? I mean, off the top, I've just been asked the question now, but off the top of your head, who would you replace him with? Like, he has done a good job since he's been there, but there comes a point that it's got to be classed as failure. But is it on the club or him?
Yeah, look, from where they were in terms of that kind of, they were drifting into no man's land, weren't they? Really, when he took over, obviously, Unai Emery was obviously not given the time possibly to do that. So he has taken them back from being 6th, 7th, 4th, 5th to 2nd or 3rd. So movement forward. but the fan base are very giddy. They're very loud. They're very expectant. You know, they celebrated Sunday like they
League.
but like they'd beaten the league leaders and they were now back in the race. But it's almost like they've forgotten that Liverpool are actually the league leaders. Man City this season are struggling, so you celebrated like you beat Man City of old when they were top, and you're now back in the race. Whereas the day before, Liverpool had comfortably, but beaten Bournemouth relatively smoothly. I know Bournemouth had a couple of chances that should have been put away, but they're no closer to Liverpool at the end of that game than they were at the start of the game week. So I think they're chasing the wrong rabbit a little bit there.
Yeah, I do. I think the only reason they were celebrating, because I think if they'd had a drop points, it would
I
have
get
been.
it. I get it.
They're still in it, aren't they? But I get what you're saying, though. And this is the point that people are saying about this "stay humble" phrase, aren't they? Is you've won nothing. You literally have won nothing. So you're going on about stay humble to a guy that's won the treble a couple of seasons ago, has won the Golden Boot 3 years running. Like, you haven't won anything. They need to focus on that, and that's what Arteta needs to focus on: winning some trophies to put them against his name. Because at the minute, it's failure, isn't it? Like, even to say he has improved them, he's done a good job, but Arsenal should be winning trophies.
So we didn't talk about that we were going to do this, but let's give them a grade for their transfer window. I mean, I'm happy to start. For me, this is an F. Because they've actually come out of the window with the injuries that they've picked up throughout it weaker than they went into the window. And a club like Arsenal, the position they're in, had pull, had money, has power, and they've not asserted any of that. So for me, this is an absolute disaster of a window. So I'm giving them an F.
Okay, I was going with numbers. So what's the lowest letter we're giving?
F.
F. I agree. F. I had 1.
Yeah.
Because at the time I'd done the rating of 1, Martinelli wasn't injured, so they hadn't lost anyone. But now you'd say it's 0 F, yeah.
Fine. We'll probably bounce between the two. I haven't got a very good memory, so the next one will probably be numbers, but just letters. We'll try and stick with letters. But a really interesting one, and you know, the difference on the page of transfers in and out of Arsenal to Aston Villa is telling. There was obviously lots of movement, some of it very, very interesting, and of course, there's a couple of real headline pieces around this. Obviously, John Duran out for big bucks. And then the kind of, I don't want to use the word scramble, but certainly the last week sort of loans in of Marcus Rashford, Marco Asensio, and of course Axel Disasi. Now, let's take them one by one. Marcus Rashford feels on paper like a good fit with a good, strong manager that could be the perfect marriage.
Yeah, I mean, we were speaking about the announcement photo, weren't we, saying that how Rashford looked overweight, he just looked scruffy, like he didn't particularly look happy. But I think we both agree that it's a good signing for Villa, obviously dependent on him getting back to form. But with the manager that they've got in a different environment, you'd like to think that there's a high possibility that could be the case, that he could hit some form. If he does, it's an absolute masterstroke, isn't it? And I think you could say that about quite a few of the signings there. You know, Asensio broke into the Real Madrid team, didn't he, a good few years ago, and since then has just dropped off a cliff. But again, if you can get him back to the player that he was, it's an unbelievable signing. So I think this window for them is a great window, but it all depends on the outcome, which is, you could say obviously about anything, but these are players, you know, well-known players that if they play to their potential, Villa have got an absolute coup.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point for this one when we're talking about the outcomes, because Daniel Marlon for me is not. I'm not convinced by him. I've watched quite a bit of German football, and I've never been particularly sold on him as an option. Obviously, I have lots of Chelsea. I keep saying this. Lots of Chelsea friends. They were desperate to get rid of him. Disasi, you know, they call him disaster. You know, like he obviously. But again, it could be the environment. Obviously, the stats were good enough for Chelsea to drop some big money on him. Asensio hasn't really done much, and of course Rashford. So they're four projects, aren't they? If Aston Villa can invest in them, whether it be emotionally, mentally, physically, that this could be an A or an F, couldn't it? Because this,
Yeah.
and obviously we've got to guess at this stage. But
Yeah.
you know, if all four of them come off, that is some window.
But even two or three of them. So, I mean, what they've effectively done is they've traded Jadon Philogene, who's from an FFP perspective, pure profit, for Daniel Marlon for 20 million, 20 mil out. But they've then spread that 20 mil over 4 or 5 years. So it's good business, because I don't think Philogene's of the level at the minute, if I'm being honest. So you'd like to think that that's a decent transfer on paper, gets them a bit of money, and they've got a better addition. And then those other three, if they do come off, great signings. But that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah, and the other thing, a side note, Diego Carlos, when he came in, looked like a great sign. Obviously, blighted with injuries, but I find it fascinating how many sort of players end up in Turkey these days. For me, there was quite a few teams that could have done with a centre back. Martin Skriniar went out to Turkey as well. In the end, Diego Carlos went out to
Yeah.
Turkey. Just feels a little bit weird that
Even Osherman in the summer window, like
Yeah,
there's a lot of. It used to be sort of a graveyard for your aging players, a bit like what the MLS has
Saudi now.
become.
Yeah,
But you are starting to see a few more players going over there. Zaha went out there as well, didn't they? Yes, they're aging or they've been injured, but they are attracting a bit better quality these days. But yeah, like I said, there's a few players that have gone there that Premier League clubs should have been looking at that. Diego Carlos improves most teams in the bottom half of the Premier League, doesn't he?
100%. So they've obviously added, essentially, you'd imagine 4 first team players. You'd imagine all 4 of them are going to be in and around that squad for obviously the John Duran out. Do you think the John Duran out negates the good of the 4 in, or do you think actually with the balance of Rashford, with the central midfield, obviously Marlon a winger, they've actually got kind of 2 players that can play across the front 3. Disasi comes in as a centre back cover. Do you think that this is going to be okay? And actually, it was the right time to let John Duran go. And the numbers were crazy, right? You can't argue with
Yeah.
the numbers.
I'm really disappointed that he's gone just from a Premier League perspective, because he was, to me, starting to develop into a beast. Like, I was really looking forward to what he was going to start. I actually thought he'd displace Watkins at the back end of this season and become the number 1, especially after you saw the bid of Arsenal for Watkins. I was thinking, oh, here's his chance. Then all of a sudden he's off to Saudi. But like you said, you've got Rashford, who can play down the middle. Asensio can, and you've also got Marlon has played down the middle as well, along with Ollie Watkins. So I think they've got more than enough to be able to make that sale and bring in those players. And like you said, invest in those loan signings. It could be a masterstroke, selling 1 player to acquire 4 or 5.
So you're giving them a grade of?
I'm going to give them a B minus, just because you don't know how this is going to go. It could very well in 4 weeks become A plus or F, couldn't it? You could just have 4 flops, but I think we have to sit on the fence a bit until you see the outcomes of B minus.
Yeah, I'll go a little bit brave. I'm going to go B. I think Unai Emery is a sort of manager. Again, we all just kind of feel safe in his arms, right? It just feels like he's a good pair of hands. It looks like he's a good human being.
He's the perfect manager for Rashford. I think if you would pick anyone in the Premier League, I'd probably say him.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a B, which moves us nicely on to B for Bournemouth. A couple of really interesting ones in here. The one that still stands out to me across the whole transfer window as left field, right, is Philip Billing to Napoli.
He's actually a decent player, isn't he? And Napoli seem to be picking up, Scott McTominay, and then they turn them into decent players. Like, yeah, it is a random one. Even like Max Aarons to Valencia, like some random signings.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that Max Aarons was even. And actually, I found out about this transfer by watching Spanish football. When Max Aarons came, I was like, what? When did that? I had to go back and kind of research the move, because I was like, I'm sure. For me, Max Aarons is still at Norwich, if I'm honest with you. He feels like that transfer that was always, every transfer window was linked with someone but never moved. But clearly he has. We spoke many times, many across the piece around. For me, Bournemouth keeping their main players was the big piece of works. There's not much in and out here really in terms of first team.
I'll tell you one that they have signed though.
Yeah,
Junior Krupi from
I
Lorient.
I was gonna get there. Yeah. I knew that you were gonna do it.
Unbelievable signing. He's going to be unreal.
Yeah, lots of people were looking at him. I'll be honest with you, I haven't seen like hours and hours of the kid, but everybody that I know in the game is convinced this is and again, he comes in the summer, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But again, good sign. Lots of clubs were looking at him.
They have links to Lorient, don't the owners? Do they own Lorient as well, or something like that? They have
Not
links.
sure. Yeah, possibly. Yeah,
I'm sure that they do. So they've obviously utilised this very well. But I mean, he's an FM wonder kid, and I know it doesn't always go to plan. But from what I've seen of him as well, plays in the 10, plays up front, quick, skillful, like looks an unbelievable sign. And then to sign him and then to get him back out on loan to get experience, they don't need him at the minute. Like, great signing.
Yep, agreed. And keeping up their squad together, I think is for me. Obviously, they're doing some great bits and pieces. So this is a relatively quick one, but a relatively easy one. What are you giving them as a grade?
So I'm going to give them a B plus, just because again they've signed a lot of young players, but they're forward planning because Julio Sola, I believe he's the left back. Kirkett
Yep.
won't be there, so they've already bought the replacement. So just good forward planning, and they've spent in Premier League terms a pittance. Great business again. Let's go A minus. Let's go A minus.
I was going to give them another B, to be honest with you. Like I say, these young players on paper makes a lot of sense, and they are definitely for me fast becoming the Brighton in the sense that they're going under the radar. They're still picking up because Bournemouth have only really sold one player for crazy numbers in Solanke. They haven't quite got that reputation that Brighton have. Now when Brighton come knocking, they're going, hold on a minute, you're not getting this kid for $5 million. He's going to cost you $20 million. Whereas Bournemouth are still going under the radar because they've only sold the one player for that big number.
Brighton as well, as they've sold bigger players, they end up have spent bigger fees, haven't they?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
great signings. But I think for a club like Bournemouth, like spending that money on young, they have to go down the young mould. They're never going to be able to sign established players. So to keep rotating their players in their squad, and for the amount that they're spending, I think they're just doing an unbelievable job.
Completely agree. So you're going A minus, I'm going B, which leads us still on to Brentford. Again, very similar to Brentford in the sense that they've only really brought in Michael Kayode from Fiorentina on loan to sort of influence the first team. We've spoken many times about how impressed we are with what they do with what they don't have. The manager never seems to moan about what doesn't happen in terms of signings and players. He just gets on with it, and they have a way of playing. And again, there was a little bit of talk. We kind of had a little bit of a text conversation towards the end of the window around people like Vissa were being linked with a couple of clubs, and Wemo was being linked with a couple of clubs. And so is this, again, almost the rinse and repeat of Bournemouth by saying that they kept their main players till the end of the season? I don't think they'll be there next season, by the way, but they kept them to the end of the season, and that was the strength of the window for them, and therefore they've come out certainly weaker, maybe a little bit stronger.
Yeah, I mean, with the one signing, they've definitely come out stronger, haven't they? Because I don't think they've loaned anybody that's weakened their squad, from what I can see.
No.
Is it Roslev? I know he was playing a little bit, so they've probably just gone like for like. So yeah, they are as strong as they were, if not stronger, if Coyote performs. I think they generally do a lot of their business in the summer as well. But I don't think they're needed to do any business, aren't they? They're not really threatening for Europe, and they're not threatening for relegation. So they just need to get through the season and evaluate again. So yeah, solid.
Yeah, so you're giving them a grade of?
I think you just have to go C, because there's not a lot of business there, but they've kept their squad, and they've improved it in an area, loaned somebody out to improve it with somebody loaned in.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go C plus, actually. I think, like I say, they're just well run. Again, the three. It's quite interesting that you've got Bournemouth, Brentford, and then we move on to Brighton as sort of the three teams that are.
Just on a side note, I don't know. Just want to mention this before I forget. There was stuff going around on social media about Brentford again, all really positive, but they were contacting season ticket holders just to give them a mental health call, which some person in particular said they really needed that support. And I just think, again, just highlighting how good a club they are, looking after their fan base. I just think they're absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, again, everybody should do more of that, shouldn't they? It doesn't matter what business you're in. Just pick up the phone and speak to people, make sure they're okay. In fact, anyone listening, go and phone someone to make sure they're okay. Good idea. Brighton, the one that's interesting for me in terms of ins is this Stefanos Simimas. Oh, Jesus, I wish I could speak properly. He's an interesting one. Obviously, Evan Ferguson going out. We spoke last week or the week before about how Evan Ferguson's possibly had one of the biggest and quickest falls from a £150 million transfer I've ever seen in all my life. That feels like a bit of an upgrade, because I think Stefanos will be getting in the first team, won't he? So I think actually they've maybe made their match day squad a little bit stronger now.
Yeah. Has he not been loaned out? I thought they would signed him and then loaned him back out.
Oh, have they?
I might be wrong. My notes don't say that, because I went and pulled them a few days out. I thought he may have been loaned, but if not, yeah, I feel that's an upgrade at the minute, because he's banging form at the minute, scoring goals, and Evan Ferguson, I've got a look in. So to get Ferguson out on loan with no buy clauses, West Ham should start. I mean, they haven't got any forwards at the minute, so he'll be starting. He'll be getting some minutes under his belt, getting fit, getting confidence, and then they'll have an abundance of talent up front next season, Brighton. So yeah, I think that's really good business.
So he remains on loan with Nuremberg until the next year. Okay, fine. Okay,
I thought he did.
I had a bit of a Chris Kamara moment there, didn't I? Where I was like, I didn't see him get sent off. Well, I missed that because I was quite excited by that signing.
Yeah, well, that was the main reason why I thought it was a bit interesting to send Ferguson out, because they've replaced him with a forward and then loaned him out. So it does feel like they've left themselves a little bit short. But I think with Welbeck coming back, and they've obviously got who's the guy they got from Leeds?
Ruta.
Ruto, yeah, I mean he's not a traditional nine, but he can play there. They have got backup, so they're not short, but they haven't got their traditional number 9 on the bench. But I think it was the right thing to do to get Evan Ferguson out. Like you said, he's dropped off a cliff, hasn't he? So if he can go back out to West Ham, get confidence and score goals, that'll put him back on the map, either for a sale or to come back into the team.
And of course, they signed Diego Gomez, that is another attacking player. So again, they have added some, again, for me, Brighton didn't lose any of their main players, right? Obviously Saudi came in with a massive offer from Matoma. I mean, that for me, that took some balls to not take. I think at the end they went to 75 million quid, not even euros. I mean, that's a crazy number for a club like Brighton to turn down, isn't it?
The feeling I got from that it was more of a Matoma turning it down than the club. I think if Matoma was interested, you might have seen them doing that. One of the interesting ones for me was cash in from Derby.
Yeah,
Derby cashed in. That's gone round, obviously. And a lot of the stuff going around on social media this was a direct stats signing.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with scouts watching him. It's purely based on stats. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes, because it is purely statistical that they've signed him.
Yeah, 23, 144 first team appearances for the Rams. That's not bad. That's not a bad return for someone who's 23, is it? Playing that many games already. That's a good.
He was Derby's captain. You'll probably see Derby be relegated now because he was their best player captain. But they've got good. I think he's come through the academy. Got good money for him, but he's come from the Championship. Then Championship, aren't they? He's come from the Championship, League One, the Championship, effectively. So it's a hell of a risk, but he's purely statistical. So it'd be good to see how he goes, because it might, we know that Brighton operate in that space, but if this proves to be a masterstroke, it's going to force them down that route even more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're not wrong. And so we're going to give Brighton a what out of it? What grade are we giving Brighton?
I really like this window. If I'm being honest, I'm going to give them an A-. I really like it. I mean, I'd have given them an A, if they'd have kept Zimas, whether you pronounce that. If they kept him in the squad, but I do also like that he's being loaned out and he's going to play. Like, I think if you're going to buy young players, you need them to develop. So I do like that he's getting game time, but I felt they could have done them in the squad. So let's go A-.
Yeah, not for me. I'm going to go. I can't go more than a C plus. Like I say again, obviously I might well come completely unstuck by that when these players that I've not really heard too much about become 50, 60 million pound midfield players and forwards. But for the time being, I think that's when I look at what other teams are doing, I don't think it moves their dial particularly at this stage. But again,
when you add into that, they've not lost anyone as well, but they've sent Evan Ferguson out to either gain form, value, confidence, whatever it is. I think they're just not weaker, are they? But they have spent and improved the squad in areas of potential.
Yep, we move on to Chelsea. God knows
how strange is their window?
So just quickly, last week I had a bit of a moment, didn't I? Talk about how football eats itself and I'm bored of the transfer window. I think I found a solution for the transfer window, by the way. It should just be the last week of January.
Just to make it bonkers.
Just because everybody fuffs about for the first 3 weeks.
But yeah, don't say that to some clubs. Some of the directors of football can't cope with a month.
But they do all of the transfers in the last week anyway.
Yeah.
So you might as well just, because you can still go and flirt with the players and do all the talking and the woofy bit stuff, but actually then just have 7 days. All the signings need to be done in those 7 days. At least it'll make it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more exciting.
And bin off FFP as well. Let the club spend what they want. Put it into a 48-hour window and say to them, go on, spend as much as you want. Go for it.
48-hour window, blimey. Now, Loan FC, Chelsea. I mean, where do you even start here, man? Like, João Felix out, Disasi out, Chilwell out, Chukwuemeka out, Fofana back, Caicedo out, Vega out, Chalobah back. It's just nuts, isn't it? Like, you're just talking about so many moving parts. I don't even know where this. I mean, let's start with João Felix. They just dropped whatever it was, 65 million quid on him in the summer. He's now at AC Milan. What are you doing?
The weirdest is either he just has he's got his own European tour going on, hasn't he? Like, he's just travelling from country to country. Like I think this is probably his 4th or 5th country now. Like he's a decent player as well, isn't he? But you look at the way that they play, he doesn't fit into that style of play. Like Cole Palmer plays in his position. Yes, you can say buy backups, but he's not going to want to be a backup, is he? That was blatantly obvious when he was signed. Yeah, I mean, the one for me that stands out is Cassadai. I mean,
Yeah.
I've watched him a fair bit. He's garbage. They've got 12.5 million for him. I know he was highly rated, but I've seen him a fair bit. He is garbage, and they've got 12.5 million. Covered their losses quite comfortably. And like I said, they'll be loaning all these players out, and eventually they'll go on to other clubs and they'll cover all of the spend that they've had. It's just moving parts continuously, aren't they? But the squad doesn't look any stronger.
Well, the one that jumps off the page a little bit of me, and obviously watched some of the Monday Night Football where Chelsea, could argue, squeaked past West Ham 2-1. Nicholas Jackson looks out of form, and
Miles off it, doesn't he?
And then, of course, looked like he might have picked up a bit of a twang. They've recalled David Fofana. I wonder whether that's with an eye of coming back into the realm of being, with obviously João Felix going out as well. Could he be coming back to make an impact as a number 9 for him, do you think?
I wouldn't have thought so. They've also got, is he named Gueye?
Yep.
Yeah, the lad up front. I mean, he looks a prospect as well. You'd like to have thought he'd have had a shot before Fofana, but yeah, I mean, Jackson looks well off it, doesn't he? He hasn't scored in quite a while, and every chance he does get seems to fluff his lines. It looks like his confidence is hit rock bottom. But I mean, that again, like Arsenal, it's glaringly obvious. I think where their problem, they need a quality 9, don't they?
And a goalkeeper. Yeah.
However, but Jorgensen, he looks a far better player to me than Sanchez, as we does Kepa. Like they've probably got some short-term solutions there already.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, we have to move on from the squad size joke because I think they've got 8 goalkeepers. Sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees, but and that's why sometimes I think, it's good to just. I know if they get injured, obviously it's a problem, but to have a number 1 goalkeeper that is your number 1 goalkeeper and it's miles ahead of everybody else isn't always a bad idea. But with the return of Trevor Chalobah as well, he's gone straight back into the first team. I think that was a good recall, if that makes sense. I think he's definitely going to make that difference because at the moment, Colwill looks like he's struggling for a bit of form. Obviously, the other Fofana's out. Wesley's out for, again, the rest of the season.
It looks done, doesn't it, to be honest? He keeps coming back and getting injured, and fortunately for him, he does look finished.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a pick and mix for me, this transfer window, which I guess with the amount of players they've got is always going to be the case for Chelsea. Spin the wheel, where you're stopping on a grade for Chelsea?
I don't think you can give them anything above the C because it's not brought anybody into strength, but they have got players' wages off the books or got them experience. So I think you've just got to go C.
Yeah, I'd go C-. I think I'm not convinced by it, if I'm honest with you. I think it could be, again, a missed opportunity for a team that's on the brink of top 4. If they'd have gone big, got a couple of players, and I think they could have made a real difference. We move on to the Palace, Crystal Palace. Obviously lost Chalobah, as we just mentioned. Remain Eze to play with Eze. I mean, they do like to make life difficult. If Elise was still there with Eze and Eze, I wouldn't want to be a commentator for that. But he looks like a bit of a talent. And of course, Ben Chilwell in on loan is a really interesting one. But interestingly, on the flip side, someone that also might play out, Jeffrey Schlupp's gone to Celtic. He's been quite a kind of one of those Premier League players that goes under the radar, but always does a pretty good job. He chips in with the occasional goal. Feels a little bit of a. Again, they kept their big players. They kept obviously Gahey was the subject allegedly of a big money offer from Spurs. So is this another one of those where we kind of just go and they kept their players and that's the strength of their window?
Yeah, I think you have to say that. Because if they'd have lost Chalobah, who's obviously on loan, and Gray, you'd have said they look really, really short at centre half. Rob Holding also went out on loan. So, I mean, the odd one for me is Ben Chilwell. I'm not aware of Tyreek Mitchell being injured. I know they're probably getting a bit of competition and cover, but I'd have said that the wing backs was the least of their worries. They're 2 of their best players, most attacking outputs. Like, I found that a bit odd, to be honest, that signing.
Yeah, I thought, as we said on here, I thought that arguably a bigger, and I don't want to be, but you look at Man United that seem to be struggling. I know they've gone out and bought Dogu, and but actually on loan, Ben Chilwell might have been a low risk backup because Luke Shaw feels like he's out for ever. Spurs are struggling for defenders.
He's another one who's done, isn't he?
Yeah, you look at Ben Chilwell, and like I say, I know that he fell out of favour, but experienced England international for me that I would have thought that maybe a bigger team might have come in for him. But obviously, it'll be interesting to see. If he can't break into the Palace first 11, then that might be the end. The start of the end for Ben Chilwell as well.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing about the loan is, can you see him breaking into the starting 11? Like, I'd find it really unusual for them to drop Tyrick Mitchell for Ben Chilwell, considering he's an academy product. He has done absolutely nothing wrong to be dropped. I don't know if they've got a buy option on him as well. I don't think
Don't think
that they
so.
have. Yeah, like to then not have a buy option on him, like I think you might be seeing him basically being backup, which is going to harm his career because I don't think he's going to get much game time. The only positive is for Chelsea that they've got his wages off the books, or a portion of it.
Yeah, and like you say, that could quite possibly be what the driving force here was. It's not like Palace are playing twice a week anymore. They're not anymore. They're in any point season. They're not in Europe. So actually, like you say, one game a week feels pretty manageable for the squad they've got. But
I'd have said Palace were one of the only clubs that don't need him. Really, I'd have said most clubs in the league need a left back, and he'd have probably fitted. He's good player. He'd have probably fitted in at most clubs. I said Palace are probably one of the only ones that don't need him.
yeah, I don't disagree. But obviously, with Chilwell coming in and Esse coming in, not losing any more other than Chalobah being recalled, I'm going to give them a C. I think it's one of them windows that's a bit meh, but not disaster, but didn't set the world alight either.
Yeah, I agree. C. Yeah, improved the squad to an extent, haven't they? Got a few people out on loan who aren't playing. Nothing major. I think your summary of meh is bang on.
The next team, however, are we allowed to include managers?
Yeah, for this, why not?
Because if we do, it's an A. Because Everton have gone from looking rudderless and very much in a relegation battle to looking like a mid-table team that are going places. And the difference between the David Moyes version of a 4-4-2 and Sean Dyche feels like night and day, almost like Jedi and what's the other one? No, I don't. Master. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. He's come in and turned that team around, isn't he? And obviously the addition of Carlos Alcaraz played in England before, but again, lots of people tell me he's a very good prospect. This feels like a completely different club, a different time to be an Everton fan, and they go into the Liverpool derby with
on a high
confidence.
Like when you look at the signings, they've added one player and not lost anyone, but that squad looked awful, didn't it? Yeah. To be honest, it had no goals in it whatsoever. I've got to say, they have played Leicester and Spurs in a moment where they're so poor. I'd like to see. I'm really interested about the Merseyside derby because, like you said, two teams high on confidence. It couldn't come at a better time for Everton. Like I said, bit of hindsight with the two teams that they've played and beat, but yeah, it should be a great game. I don't think you can go do a lot with this window though. They've added Alcaraz. I don't think he'll play many games. Although they've had a couple of injuries recently, haven't they? So they have bolstered somebody to come and replace them. So it's not bad, but haven't lost any of their players, which is the main thing.
I mean, I wish Bradley Moonen all the luck on his loan at Prescott Cables. I hope that goes well for him. Never heard of Prescott Cables in my life.
Never heard of him.
No, but the point for me was that the Prescott Cables jumps out as being the
related to Alfie.
Honestly, mate, I don't even know what that is. But anyway, like I say, David Moyes coming back to Everton is absolutely the news. It's absolutely the blockbuster. Arguably the signing of the transfer window, I would say, without wanting to kind of ruin anything. But what you're giving Everton as a grade, bearing in mind that we're allowed to include the manager.
Yeah, go on then. Let's give it an A because of the manager. I think if you were to say that a club hiring a manager, I'd probably go back to when Everton, the last team to hire a manager that fit so well was Everton with Sean Dyche, I'd say. I think obviously that just ran its course, but then you can go back into Moyes and say, what a perfect fit, knows the club inside out, has a bond with the fans immediately. He's not really done a lot different to Dyche. I think he's obviously just put a few more players, give him a bit more license, but the formation's the same. I'd imagine the instructions are relatively similar. It's just everything that he's brought to the club, the feeling around the club, the fans, everything. A.
Yep. I'm gonna go B plus, but yeah, I agree. I think it's a great fit, and they do say don't go back, but this one feels like an absolute no brainer. And of course, Everton are now completely safe out of any talk of relegation, and that really is massive for them going into the new stadium next season. We move to Fulham. Now, I've got to be honest with you, I've missed that Willian had gone back to Fulham.
Yeah, he's gone back alone. There were 35-year-old Willian left, and they've replaced him with a 36-year-old Willian.
It Like every 12 months, Willian is moving back to Brazil and then back to Fulham. Like this feels like this is like the 16th time. I feel like Groundhog. I feel like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day.
It felt a bit odd him leaving though, didn't he? Because he was performing. Like it wasn't like he was,
We were very happy with him.
at the back
Yeah,
end of his career. He was one of their better players. So it did feel odd that they'd let him go.
yeah. I think it's fair to say that he had some problems in Brazil, didn't he, from security point of view, etc. I think he was looking to kind of secure his family down. Obviously, not a lot here really to talk about. They brought a couple of players back. They signed a very young Seth Chingwaro from Man City. Willian coming back. Again, I haven't really got anything other really to say other than a little bit meh. Again, to be honest with you, like a window that's just passed them by.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit meh. However, I do think Willian improves the team and squad. I think he'll probably, if he's fit and at the same level as he was last season, and he's not completely lost his legs, he should be starting games for them.
Yep. I can only give him a C because I've got nothing really to add. You know, it's a bit there really. Whereas we move to Ipswich, and they've been very busy as you would expect them to be. Both in terms of for the long term and the now. They brought in Ulo and Ciso on loan from Brighton. We both were very happy with that. We mentioned Philogene already, probably adds a little bit to the squad, and Ben Godfrey is a starter. But is it fair to say that they're all good signings for Ipswich, but not great signings for Ipswich?
Again, I want to applaud Ipswich for at least having a go and attempting to make some signings to bolster the squad. I think Enciso is a great signing for them on loan. I think he improves their team and he will start every single game, so that's a good signing. Alex Palmer's a goalie, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that Muric has been lobbing them in for fun. So I don't know whether he's going to go in as the number one, which if he does, it's an improvement. I do think Philogene isn't quite at Premier League level yet. He possibly could be in the future. But again, it's another one that if they do get relegated, you've got a player there who will shine at Championship level. And Ben Godfrey improves them. So I think it's a decent window from them. And, I applaud them for at least having a go. I do feel that they probably need a bit more either Premier League experience or a bit more know-how from Europe. But at least they've had a go and, they're willing to show the fans that they're going to fight to stay in the Premier League by making some improvements to the squad.
I'm going to be biased by their result against Southampton. I think, like when we talked about David Moyes being part of this, the fact that they lost to Southampton at the weekend, for me, makes this window a bit of a disaster. Because, everybody thought that was 3 points, which keeps them very much in that kind of pressure of looking upwards. Whereas losing to Southampton, I feel actually possibly pops the bubble of what they can achieve. And so actually, when I now look at it, knowing they've just lost, this feels like they've just signed a bunch of Dwight Gales, too good for the Championship, not quite good enough for the Premier League. And they're almost resigned to their fate, which is fine too, by the way, because like you say, you need to prepare for that. And that's good business sense to be thinking about where you're going to end up. I just think that defeat to Southampton has absolutely killed them. And like you say, they've signed a bunch of players that actually, many of them on loan. So again, you're not taking any risk. The ones that they've brought in on permanence, for me, are ready for next season in the Championship, not the Premier League.
Yeah, Palmer and Philogene do look like that, don't they? I mean, and you can say a lot of their signings in the summer were in that mould as well, really. You've got Hutchinson, who does look a good player, but he's never done it in the Premier League. Sammy Smodics is a Championship striker, for being honest, hasn't done it in the Premier League.
Jack Clark.
I mean, you could reel them off, couldn't you? Jacob Greaves, the centre-half, he was probably one of the best centre-halves in the Championship, but has never done it at Premier League level. Muric, the goalie, just got relegated with Burnley. So there is loads of that. And that's the main thing you can say about their signings throughout the Premier League season is they haven't really signed anyone who's gone into the team. Strangely, with the exception of Calvin Phillips, who you would have thought would have gone in and instantly been a success, who hasn't. They haven't done that. So, I mean, that's the biggest fault for me. But at least they're trying to have a go. And, it does look a plan there that they're building a squad possibly to come back down, to go back up. There is a plan there, which with other clubs, I can't see what the plan is. So I applaud them for having a go and having a strategy.
And therefore you're giving them a...
I'd go for a C because I do feel that Ben Godfrey and Enciso improved their 11. So they have signed 2 players that go into the 11. Is it going to be enough to keep them up? Probably not, but at least they've gone and improved their squad.
And for that, I give them a C+. Now, I have a feeling that the next team that we talk about, you might be talking about lack of strategy, lack of plan, lack of forward thinking, and maybe, just maybe, a complete giving up on what can happen with only Woyo Koulibaly coming in and not a lot else happening. This is arguably worse than Arsenal's, if it's possible to give
an
F minus. This is
Well,
possibly
that was the main reason why I asked what the lowest mark was, because this is a Z. I genuinely this baffles
said.
me more than any other club. Leicester were crying out for reinforcements. You know, they've got 4 or 5 long-term injuries, and they've gone and signed Woyo Koulibaly from Parma for 1.9 million and he's now a backup to James Justin, who's been the worst right back in the league. About 75% of the goals conceded have come from there. They've not even signed a replacement for him. The 2 centre halves are slower than, God, I don't even know what the analogy is. Like Yannick Vestergaard, he's running in treacle. Fass has got a rick in him every game. Like there's the fact that Leicester haven't gone out and even they've got 2 loan spots available from Europe that they could have gone and got 2 loan players. That hasn't happened. They sold Tom Cannon for 10 million. You know, that's Hamza Chowdhury's gone out on loan to free up a space for the Premier League squad. Nobody's come in. Like it's completely baffling to me. The business that was done in the summer as well. Like you're looking at some of the players that they've got on the bench. They're all new signings. Oliver Skipp, Caleb Okoli, Jordan Ayew. Like they're all new signings. The whole summer, the summer window and this window has been an absolute disaster. And I know there's a protest at the ground, King Power Ground, for the Friday night game against Arsenal. We'll get onto that next week, probably in a bit more detail. But the board, the director of football, they deserve everything that's coming to them for this window because it's effectively accepting relegation.
Nothing further to add, Your Honour. Can't disagree with any of that, and you're absolutely on the spot. And I think it's fair to say that F minus times 2.
Z.
It's a shame. Like I say, if you're a Leicester fan, I can only imagine the heartache of the hope of a transfer window, thinking that you get some reinforcements in to see absolutely nothing happen. And of course, even
just to add on to that, you know what we were just talking about Ipswich. Even if you've accepted relegation, go and sign a Championship player. Like I said, next year, Jamie Vardy's possibly going to retire, leave the club. They won't have a recognised forward. They've just sold Tom Cannon. Go and sign a player ready to go and play in the Championship, like what Ipswich have done. Ipswich are going to have a cracking squad when they go down. They're going to have a couple of assets to sell. Leicester are going to have to asset strip. They're going to have to play all the kids. Like it's going to look bleak next season. So you either have a go, don't you, and try and stay in the Premier League, or you do a bit of forward planning. You try and sign some players who are going to be ready stars for the Championship. None of that's happened.
Definitely not. And F minus rings true. Liverpool's a funny one. Now, we can't really talk about the transfer window because they did nothing in or out really, but just a couple of fringe players out. But the reason why I'm going to give this a low score is because they haven't tackled the problem of the contract renewals, and now those players that contract expire at the end of the season are able to speak to foreign clubs around a pre-contract agreement. And if they were to lose 2 of them, that would be almost, when we talk about the top, it's not like we're talking about squad. We're talking about some absolute Liverpool legends almost. Or not almost, definitely. You talk about Salah, Alexander-Arnold, Van Dijk, etc. So for me, the fact that they haven't tackled that, I'm actually going to give this a C minus. It's going to be okay for this season. They're going to win the league, right? So well, amazing, fantastic. But I think this could be one and done. And if you look at the swing of the Man City squad with what they've done this window and what Liverpool have done this window, for next year, I think that's a massive, almost a 15, 20 point swing between teams.
Yeah, I mean, the only positive you can say is they've got some of their young players who've got potential. Jayden Danns, Baz Cecic, Calvin Ramsey. They've got some players out, even Cade Gordon. They've got players out on loan, haven't they, to get experience, which I think is really good. But that's the only positive that you can say. If they'd have had one of those players signed and done on the contracts, got Salah over the line as an example, it just quiets down the noise. But the fact that none of them, and there's not even been a sniff that anything's near, like you said, I think it's starting to kick up a bit of a stink, really. And I don't think it'll have an effect on the outcome of the league title, but it very well could do. Especially if Arsenal had got Watkins, I think you might have started to see that having an effect. Arsenal have just played into the hands, haven't they, with that?
Yeah, like I say, I think the thing for... And I have no axe to grind with Liverpool in any way, good, bad or ugly. I would say enjoy this season would be my advice. Really, really enjoy this season. I think next season will be, assuming you don't get all those players re-signed, I think it'll be a very, very different outlook next season for you. So genuinely enjoy the ride, and it'd be great if they won everything and go and do it all or everything they can, of course, because Man City Sorry, what grade are you giving Liverpool? Sorry, I gave mine. I don't think you gave yours. Sorry.
I think I'm going to go C minus. I think it has to be a C because they've got a lot of their youth out on loan to get some experience.
Yeah, that's what I was C minus to. Whereas Man City, Omar Mamouche, one of the most exciting players in. Go on, you got something to say?
Because I think we've got a difference of opinion on this window.
Well, let's see what happens, Fran. Don't ruin the surprise.
Yeah.
But Omar Mamouche is one of the most exciting young players in European football. Nico Gonzalez becomes the Rodri backup that they've never had, and therefore, actually, they've looked for him for years and years, going way back to when he was at Barcelona. Kushinov is going to be a fantastic centre back. I think the reports of him being a failure in that first game were a little bit early, and they've added S3E23 as well. So for me, this is absolutely not necessarily to impact this year in terms of winning anything this year, but when you look at the impact that has on the squad, for me, that's a window and a half. But you're going to tell me you don't think it is?
No, I like the window. I just feel that they could have done with a few players more for the here and now, like a couple of them. So, I mean, Omar Mamouche, I'm yet, he was on fire, wasn't he,
Yep.
in the Bundesliga? I mean, in the few games that he's played, I'm yet to see what all the fuss is about. Like, he takes pop shots from 40 yards. Like, he looks a decent player, and I'm not writing him off. Like, he obviously needs to settle down, get used to a new system, a new squad, new teammates, all of those sorts of things. But I've heard people saying he's going to be the next person coming in to tear the league up. He doesn't look like that to me. Kusanov, young player, will improve. Same with Vitor Reis. Is Echeverri is he now with the squad, Claudio Echeverri? Because I know he was signed in the summer window, but was back at River. But I don't know whether he's actually in the squad now. But he's another great young player that they've signed from Argentina. He's the big thing coming through.
Yeah, no, next January he comes over because he's not 18 yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But I agree with you entirely on they've had a great window, because they've bolstered the squad. You've got aging players there like Kyle Walker, who's obviously gone, and others. And they've bolstered the squad with young players with huge potential. So great window in that respect. I'd have just liked to have seen one or two more players for the here and now.
Yeah, again, it's a difficult balance, isn't it? I think, with Kyle Walker going out, like you say, I think
they need a right back.
They definitely do. They definitely do.
I can't believe that Mateus Nunes he's not a right back at all.
Well,
I can't believe they've not gone and got somebody for the here and now and gone bang. There you go. He's our next right back for the next 5-10 years.
They need a left back too, right? Like, for me, they're playing Gavardio there, who's done a great job. But for me, he's a centre back. But I think that this is going to be the evolution now. Is that some of those defenders are getting a bit older in terms of Akanji, Stones, Ake are getting the wrong side of 30 again. Unless I've got that wrong, unless they're all Brian and Buemos and they're 25 as well. I'm pretty sure they're not. So absolutely there is going to be an evolution of this. But to get 4 players of that quality in the January window, when everyone tells us how difficult it is to get players in, I know that they can throw money at it, and I get it, but I think that's a very good window. I will be very interested to see what happens with people like Jeremy Doku, with Jack Grealish in the summer. I think there's lots of questions still to be answered, but in terms of where they're going, I think this is a very good window. And for me, I'm going to give them an A.
Yeah, I'm going to go B minus, just because I feel they've gone down the route of youth too much. I think should have had a bit of a blend. But you mean if in the summer that they go and get some here and now players, then you have to revert back and say they went for the youth in Jan and they've gone and got the here and now in the summer. So yeah, it is a good window. Don't get me wrong.
But you're giving them a.
I'm going to give them a B plus.
B plus. Tight. Man U. From Manchester City to Manchester United. Really, one player in that fits the system, Dorgu. Again, this feels like another missed opportunity for me when we talk about teams that didn't do enough. Man United are very high up on that list. Although Patrick Dorgu obviously is brought in for the new manager's system, and he will be a good player, and he will make that left wing back position his own. I've no doubt about that. But again, I can't help but think that they've missed the opportunity to strengthen, and actually almost they've let the manager down by the fact that if they've even got 3 pieces in this transfer window, they would have got closer and sooner to the way he wants to play. And for me, they've let him down.
Yeah, they seem to be raiding Arsenal as well, don't they, for their youth projects as well? Because it's aid in heaven. The sky's the limit for him.
Did you go around on social media just looking for football cliches before you come on here?
I've literally just thought that of myself, so I'm claiming that.
Did you balls?
Genuinely did. But, I mean, they seem to be recruiting a lot of Arsenal's youth, don't they, at the minute? But the thing that I find frustrating about this is I feel sorry for Amorim. He's come in, he plays a particular way, and he's gone, this is the way that I'm going to play. You've hired me to play my style of football, my formation, my brand, and you've given me one player. Now he's working with tools that aren't fit for purpose. I think the good piece of work they have done is they've got 2 players out the squad in Rashford and Anthony who he doesn't believe in, so they've got him out. So I think that's really positive for him. However, to not then bolster your squad in 4 or 5 players that you want, I think just hanging him out to dry a bit, if I'm being honest. I feel a bit sorry for him.
Yeah, it feels like Manchester United aren't run, well, obviously not run the way they used to be running it, and it's all looking a little bit kind of higgledy-piggledy. He wanted to come across in the summer. He was told that you can't wait. If you wait till summer, you're not coming. He believed that was the best time to do it because you get a transfer. You get a transfer when you get that time on the training ground that you don't get during the season. For me, the risk here is if Anthony and Marcus Rashford go and smash it in their new teams, it's going to be a question of what's going on at Man United because Jadon Sancho looks like a different player at Chelsea than he did at Man United. So actually, maybe there's a culture there that's not enabling players to perform to their ability.
I don't think that's an actual question. I think that is the case. Like, even there is definitely something at Manchester United because in the past 10 years, probably with the exception of Ibrahimovic, who's got so much confidence and self-awareness, everything about him exudes confidence, doesn't he? That I think he just sort of blew off this whole Manchester United thing and performed. I can't remember the last person Manchester United brought in who smashed it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's and you could argue that even like losing Scott McTominay in the summer has been an absolute body blow with what he's doing in
Been
Italy.
a revelation at Napoli, hasn't he?
So again, lots of bad decisions going on there, but no clear strategy. So for me, Patrick Dorgu is a goal-scoring wing-back. He does make that position his own, but I think they're arguably weaker on paper, and so I'm going to give them a D plus.
Yeah, I'd go C minus.
Yeah, it's not a good window. And talking to teams that. Again, really, I don't know how we managed to talk for 56 minutes with not a lot of action because Newcastle were another team that didn't really get a lot done. A couple of outs in the sense that Almiron went to Atalanta for money. Lloyd Kelly gone on loan to Juventus, which is an interesting one. But really, not a lot in, not a lot out. But they get carried away because they're in a cup final, and actually the results are pretty good, and they're on the charge for Champions League. So actually, maybe this is one of those where they didn't need to do anything now. They're on a bit of a charge. And actually, that might bias my outcome of this window because they are doing well on the pitch.
Yeah, I don't think that in this window that they have a position where it's glaringly obvious that they need some reinforcements because you've got Botman coming back from injury. You just said it was centre half, but Botman's coming back and looked good. The strange one for me is Lloyd Kelly. Obviously, got him on a free this season, and he's now gone to Juventus on loan with a buy option, which I think is like 20 million. So they're going to make an absolute packet on him on a free.
Oh, you've answered your own question, by the way.
Yeah, and also, what are Juventus doing? They let Houston go, and then they've got Lloyd Kelly. Like, that's just ridiculous as well. But I mean, you'd like to think the out business for Newcastle has been good because they said that they won't miss Almiron because he's not played this season, and Lloyd Kelly's not, and they're going to make a packet on him for PSR as well. So yeah, not a bad window.
And so therefore, you're giving them a.
Let's go see. I don't think you can give them anything because nothing came in, but I think the outgoings mean that it's not a D.
Yes. Oh, C. Let's go C. C. Again, another team that historically have been absolutely crazily busy. And again, you look at the ins and outs, but not really first team, as this is very much a sort of reserve and youth team movement. Although James Ward-Prowse that wasn't playing going back to West Ham is mildly interesting, but again, a little bit of a. Not a lot happened, but again, who cares? Because they're absolutely flying, and to beat Brighton 7-0, no one was really thinking of Nottingham Forest needing any players. Their squad is stacked, kept everybody they needed to keep, so therefore, give them a B and move on.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can say is when they were being linked to players like Cunha and Visser, I feel that they have missed a bit of an opportunity here. I'm trying to think of when teams have performed in the past. I feel that when you're in a moment like they are, sometimes you need to grasp it and go and get a star player. So I do feel they've missed an opportunity. I do like, Wayne Hennessy's come back on a free. They obviously shortened the goalkeeper area, but not bad. And Tyler Binden from Reading, he's a good player. He's in League One. And they've loaned him back out to get experience. So again, a bit of forward planning there, which I like. But I do feel that they've missed an opportunity. And I've used Cunha as the example. It'd have been difficult to get him out there. But if they'd have gone and nicked someone like that, I feel that they had a real opportunity here.
Yeah, I think people just aren't convinced this is a long-term success story,
And
and they're
that's the point. Yeah, whilst you're on top, you want to try and make hay while the sun shines, don't you? Really?
and for me, Cunha was Arsenal should have gone for Cunha
Yeah.
hard because I think he would have got that's the sort of club that he would leave Wolves for.
Mm.
I don't think in January people are going to leave for not that type of player. But again, I could be wrong. So, but again, what a great season, and really, who cares about the transfer window for Nottingham Forest? They're doing some amazing stuff. Southampton, realistically, not a lot they can do at this stage. They're in absolute trouble. Obviously, the interesting thing, by the way, that sits outside of this conversation, Sheffield United have done some real bits and pieces in terms of what they've brought in. They've brought in Diaz, Ben Brereton Diaz, and you spoke about Tom Cannon in the forward line. That they've brought in quite Hamza Jones, I think, has gone there as well. They've brought in a lot of players, Sheffield United, in this window. That means that they're putting themselves in a good spot to kick on and try and get back into the Premier League.
Yeah. Well, Leicester seem to be Chef Hugh's feeder club. They've had a lot of players from them in the past 12 months. Harry Suter was also on loan there. Quite a few have been linked there. So, yeah, I mean, they've done exactly what they need to, strengthen with top championship players, haven't they, to get themselves promoted. But on the Southampton front, again, at least they've had a go. They've signed some players. Albert Grombeck was unbelievable last season, and as they've gone to Rennes, and he started really well, so I'm surprised he's left, but he's a good signing. And they've also signed some other players, which I must admit I don't know a lot of.
Yeah.
But again, at least they've done some business. They've got some players out. Ronnie Edwards for a bit of experience. Adam Armstrong's a weird one to go out on loan. He was their captain. So, but again, getting him off the books and replacing him with other players, refreshing it, and at least they're giving themselves a form of a chance to have a go. Picking up that win has brought them back into talks of being able to escape relegation. They won't. They're too far behind, but they were being spoke about the worst Premier League team ever. So I think this is not a bad window for them. When you are rock bottom, like, who's going to want to join you? And they've got 4 players in.
Yep. Can't disagree. Again, like yourself, I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert on Victor Rudo and the likes, but ultimately, like you say, Southampton are a club that the best way I've described Southampton is that if my son was at that level, I would be okay for him to go to Southampton because I know that he's going to get developed. I know he's got a chance of breaking through, and so all those players are using it, no doubt, as a stepping stone, quite rightly. But Southampton are okay with that too.
Yeah.
And like you say,
with Tyler Diblin this year, giving him the opportunity to shine. He will be sold next year, absolutely no question. 50 million minimum. He will go to someone, and they've paid for their rebuild for the Championship, and it's all because they give youth the chance. And that's exactly, again, at least they look like they've got some form of plan.
And keeping him, as we keep talking about, is because my understanding was there was a couple of big clubs circling him. So keeping him makes it, I think I'm going to give them a B-.
Yeah, I agree, B-.
Moving on to a team that was definitely circling him is Tottenham Hotspur. Being honest with you, needed absolute miracles in terms of all over the pitch, from goalkeeper to forward to midfield to defenders. If we're being honest, it became a little bit embarrassing, the scattergun approach at the back end of the window, in terms of there didn't seem to be a plan. However, they've signed Kinksky, who obviously has come in and done a pretty decent job in goal. Obviously, Danso, that is a player that very much will be the Christian Romero replacement in the summer. And Matthias Tell from Bayern Munich, who is, contrary to common belief, signed on a loan with an option that will be made permanent in the summer.
And he's just come out and confirmed, hasn't he? He said it's 6-month loan, but in effect that he's a Spurs player.
What I would say, I found it really fascinating how many people were offended by that, but then found solitude in the fact that it was just a loan because he didn't choose their club. Like, there's a load of grown men that get invested in players they don't know about and get upset when they don't sign for their clubs. Frankly, it's quite embarrassing.
Well, and some of the things that you hear and see online as well is just bullshit, isn't it? Like, and people actually just take it as gospel.
Yeah. Anyway, like I say, nuts. The problem for me with Tottenham is that they just needed so much. There was no plan to this. So Kevin Danso arguably is better than what they had as a backup, but they didn't go into the window wanting Kevin Danso. It became, like I say.
Yeah, well, he was on the way to Wolves, wasn't he?
Wolves, exactly right.
He was the one I was talking about last week that he'd already been, I can't remember what club he was going to. I'm sure it was someone like Juve.
It was Roma, I think.
Yeah,
Roma.
He had a medical for his heart.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a bit of a strange one. I mean, he is a decent player. He's solid. He's a strong player, but it is a bit of an odd one.
And of course, Matthias Tell. Do you know what? And I've watched a fair bit of him because he was linked to so many clubs. I kind of had a look. and it only hit me last night watching the highlights of the Newcastle Arsenal game, is that actually he looks like a younger version, a rawer version of Isak.
Mm.
Because I couldn't quite work out why everybody was so excited by him, because his numbers aren't crazy good. But if you look at his physicality, if you look at his pace, you look at his dribbling, you look at the way he finishes, I think what Spurs have tried to do here is get the next Isak at a sensible, because Isak could go in the summer for 110 million,
Oh
right?
yeah,
He
yeah,
could
yeah.
pick it up. So to get Tell for 50 million, they're gambling that he becomes the next Isak, which if it comes off will be a masterstroke. Not convinced it does, by the way.
I think that's where Spurs are, though, aren't they? To be
Oh,
honest, like they can't go out and buy, the Harry Kane replacement of Harry Kane. Like that's where they are. They have to go down that route at the minute, especially where they currently are in the table.
oh, Jesus.
Granted with the injuries, but clubs aren't going to look at Spurs and go, "Oh, you're what? I think the 15th. Oh, you're 15th. I want to go there." Like they're going to have to go down that route. And let's be honest, is there many youngsters out there with a reputation of Tell at the minute? There's not. So I think it's a really good signing.
Yeah, I think, as we know, Spurs need to just get their players back. And if they do, actually, they're building quite a good squad. But at the moment, they can't get anywhere near a first 11 on the pitch. So I don't think they could have won this transfer window, to be fair. Whatever they did, they would have left gaps in the squad just because there's so many things that needed
Yeah.
replacing.
Like
And
you
what you...
said, it's the criticism though is that, I mean, even before Tell was signed, it was announced that Levy had gone over there to
Yeah.
speak to him, and then there was an announcement that he turned them down. It's like, did you not do any due diligence that he wanted to come? You just thought you'd fly over there to have a chat, like, and it was in like the last 2 days.
Oh, yeah.
Just seemed bonkers. Like again, where's the forward planning here? The wiggle room that Spurs have with PSR, there should have been a clear plan here. There should have been 5, 6 players positions lined up, and they should have been done.
Correct. 100%. And they should have gone big, especially as until Sunday they were in a relegation battle. But having said all that, Spurs, you're going to give them a...
C. I'm going to give them a C plus because I think, like you said, I think they could have done a bit more, but I think the business that they've done is good.
Yeah, I'll go with that. C plus. I'm happy with that. I think that makes sense. Like I say, again, a couple of risky signings in terms of if they come off amazing. That C plus could very quickly become an A minus,
Yeah, yeah.
or a D minus. So as with all these things, if we only knew that. West Ham, again, being honest with you, I feel like they probably missed an opportunity to back the new manager. Having said that, recalling James Ward-Prowse, I don't think it's a bad idea. Set pieces and set plays, I think he's going to add some goals. Obviously, Evan Ferguson again could be amazing or bang average, but it was a position they needed to help with. It means that Jarrod Bowen can maybe go back into a kind of attacking midfield player, wing position rather than playing down the middle. So actually, again, the new manager coming in, they feel like a different club. So I'm going to give them a better score because Graham Potter's come in and made them look much more of a well-balanced team. And James Ward-Prowse and Evan Ferguson probably are two good little bits of business.
Yeah, and like you said, especially they haven't got a recognised forward. Evan Ferguson coming in gives them that, doesn't he? Yes, he's not been playing, he looks out of form, but they're going to give him that opportunity and platform to get his confidence back and shine. So I think it is a good window. What I do think it highlights is, one, how they won the transfer window, didn't they, in the summer? Now, as a new manager in, none of those players fit that style. So it shows how far out they pushed the boat to get all of those new players in for the manager. And it's now backfired, which you can tell by the level of signings in this window. They're hamstrung, but they must be hamstrung by PSR because there was a huge outlay, wasn't there?
It also shows that these predictions and these conversations we have about who wins. Don't remember the year before Tottenham won the transfer window, that didn't work out either. So, it's almost become the curse. You don't want to be the team that wins the transfer window because actually it's probably going to end up...
It's a strange one though, isn't it? Because at the time, on paper, all of those were great signings. But then, they changed the style of football. Everyone thought it was going to be tweaked, but they changed it. And all of a sudden, those players weren't starting. They weren't fitting in a formation. You've gone, those are the wrong players. But on paper, looks a great window.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're giving them a...
I'm going to go... let's go B minus.
I'm going to go B because I think Graham Potter is the right man for the job. I think for the first time in a long while, they've got someone that the fans can get behind. I liked how he set them up against Chelsea. I think that's a good step forward. And I like the idea of James Ward-Prowse being back there. So for me, I'm giving them a B. Now, I've got to be honest with Wolverhampton Wanderers, obviously missed out on that. So I don't know a huge amount about the players that they've brought in.
So
Again,
I know about the lad who's come from Red Star Belgrade. He's won Player of the Year there for the past couple of seasons. He's strong physical defender. I think he's a really good addition. And Agbadu, who's come in from Rem,
Yeah.
he started 3 or 4
Yeah.
games and he looks strong, good player. So I think what they've done in the window means that they have taken themselves out of the relegation threatened from Leicester and Ipswich. I think just those two. I don't know a lot about Menetzi, but I think he's a strong midfielder. But I think what they've done is they've bought 3 quality. So I don't know Menetzi, so let's say 2 quality players there, which are going to give them enough to avoid relegation. Because I think the forward line with Cunha renewing that contract as well, that's going to give them enough quality to be able to go past those 2 teams, I feel.
And so for that reason alone, we have to give them an inflated grade, right? Because to stay in the Premier League was what this window was about, and the other teams have missed that opportunity. So
it's not they've not had a huge window of 10 players coming in, but those 2 especially, and then adding Cunha, I think we've got to give them an A. If I'm being honest, I think it's a great window for them. It's the sort of window which other Ipswich and Leicester were crying out for, 2 or 3 quality additions to ensure Premier League survival, which Wolves have gone and done that.
I'm going to give them a B- for all of the above. I agree with you. Sorry, B+. Sorry, completely the wrong way around. B+. I agree with you. I think that they have done enough to stay up. Arguably, would they have had enough anyway? But again, to cement it and to take the chance, I think could see Wolves not only stay in the Premier League but maybe kick on next year. And if they can get a couple of those transfers right, Cunha will leave in the summer. He's signed a new contract. Great, he's getting a higher wage now to stay with no doubt a release fee in some way, shape, or form in the summer. But Wolves to stay in the Premier League was what they needed to do out of this window, and I think they've done that as well. So I started before we recorded saying we've got nothing to say, and this will probably be one of our longer ones because that's how it always ends out, and it's proven to be the case. So we're around 10 minutes in. Obviously, we've rounded up the transfer window because there's no Premier League fixture, so we'll go back to normal for next week, Fran. So, but we're starting to make some traction, or you are starting to make some traction on social media. You're starting to make some traction on all of the different platforms. So if people wanted to reach out, watch us, talk to us, where can they find us and how can they go about doing that?
So social media wise, we're on Twitter or X, we're on Facebook, we're on TikTok. If you search for The Atmosphere is Electric or TAIE podcast, you'll be able to find us. There'll be an image on screen now with all of that detail. If you want to watch the episodes or listen to them, you're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, and we're also on YouTube. As again, search for The Atmosphere is Electric, you'll be able to find us. I'm just going to reel off. We're going to start doing some quizzes as well, get some bit of fun into there. So I'm just going to reel off 3 questions and then we'll finish it because I know we're running out of time, but we'll put the answers on next week. So the first question, the category is Golden Boot winners. So only one player has won the Premier League Golden Boot while playing for 3 different clubs. Who is he? And if you can name the player in the clubs. The second one is Premier League legends. So 2 players hold the record for the most assists in a single Premier League season with 20. Who are they? And the third question is shock results. In the 22-23 season, Premier League season, this newly promoted side thrashed Manchester United 4-0 within the first 35 minutes of the game. Which club was it?
I'm going to need to go and do some research, mate, because I'm clearly not clever. So, some.
Well, do you want the answers now?
No, I mean, no. Let's leave it. See if anybody
leave it for next week then.
See if anybody can get those between now. Ping them into us. And you never know, maybe we'll give away the yellow and green top in the back there that Fran's got in his house as a prize. Or maybe not. We might start to do some prizes. But Fran, as always, mate, that was my favourite hour of the week. I'm going to go and do some football research before you start throwing more questions at me as we move forward. Thank you very much, but that was brilliant. And I look forward to speaking to you next week.